Well, as I came to write this sermon, I couldn't decide whether writing my own farewell is more like writing my own obituary, or is it like being a ghost at your funeral who gets to talk? Either one is interesting, and that would probably horrify everyone, so. I remember wanting to write this sermon. I remember when we said, how are we going to do this service? I said, well, I want a little homily, I want a sermon. And they were like, yes, of course. And now I'm like, oh God, that was all very theoretical. And now here we are, what do I say? So I confess that it took me a long time to kind of get my thoughts together. And everyone who has worked with me here knows that I am a master of procrastination, but not when it comes to sermons. When it comes to sermons, I spend all the time, lots of time. I think, I plot, I write, I rewrite. I mean, every minister has had their amount of Saturday night specials. Don't even let them fool you there's the ones that have and the ones that haven't, and the ones that say they haven't are lying. But I did spend a lot of time thinking about what I want to say, what I want to share with you. First, I want to share a reading that made a big difference to me. And then I'm going to share my one little last words of advice, which are about the next right thing. So first, I would like to share this reading. It's by Martha Durkee-Neuman. She's a UU minister. And it begins with a quote from Octavia Butler, The Parable of the Sower. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. Change is God. Last fall, I had been thinking a lot about the end of the world, the apocalypse, the time when the world we know to be true is gone and the new world is taking shape. I've been thinking about the end of the world so much, she writes, that I was going to preach about it. And then 2 days before the end of her sermon, she writes, I experienced the sudden end of a serious relationship. And I found myself heartbroken and without a place to stay and adrift. I woke up at a friend's house and shakily gave my sermon, feeling as though my world had just ended. Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower came into my life at this time, exactly when I needed it. I didn't know the times of change I was in for, or how much I would come to need these words, but I woke up every morning for months and read these words like a mantra. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. Change is God. Everything about my personal world and the world around me changed in the span of a week. Then the pandemic hit, and the world changed again and again. So many things ended, and so many new things began. We have learned to live on shifting ground. We have learned to ask ourselves, how long will this last, knowing that it will not last forever? We have asked ourselves, what will life look like on the other side of this change? What will normal become? Will we find the courage to protect our people? Despite all of these questions, she writes, God is change, and despite how painful, the change is holy. As she repeats the words to herself, more of Octavia Butler's words came to her. Another quote, God exists to be shaped. And I began to work on shaping my change, reckoning with the knowledge that it is holy because it is my change to make. I am no longer a victim of change. I am creating, shifting grounds. I am shaping the world that is to come. I am shaping God. It's a beautiful reading. I keep being so sad, and then I'm reminded, Elena said this, the only reason I'm so sad is I really care about you all so much. And also I feel sad, and then I think, are you complaining? because you have it so good. And you have people who love you, and you've had a wonderful job, more than a job, at this place for 3 years. So, yeah, I'm complaining, but I realize it's silly. Sorry. So the other story I want to share with you is just a story of a book. Well, you guys will, sorry, I can't find my thing. I find that generally speaking, if you're going to talk to Unitarian Universalists, it's useful to tell them about books. So, those of you who are avid or even casual sci-fi fans may have become familiar with an author named Brandon Sanderson. Among about 1,000 other projects, this guy, every few years, cranks out another new book in a series called the Stormlight Archives. And they're these enormous, like Game of Thrones, except much less sex. Thank you. I mean, not that's bad, but good Lord, it's distracting. And lots of science and spirituality and politics and intrigue and adventure. There are strange alien species, or at least we think they're the only aliens, and there are assassination attempts, and there's people who are, what did I write there? There's love, and there's marriages for love, there's marriages for convenience, there's a famous heretic who can out-argue all the clerics and look hot in her ball gown while doing it. I mean, the books have complicated villains and untrustworthy but wonderful heroes with strange powers and guiding spirits and ensouled material objects and deep questions about ethics and morals and colonization and leadership, and it's just all a grand damn spectacle. So if you like sci-fi, I recommend these books. And the only reason I went into all that detail is because I know you, and of these people, I'm betting a third of you have already heard of Brandon Sanderson, a third of you don't care, and a third of you are already Googling where you can get his book. So I consider this to be a public service on my way out the door. Throughout the books, the characters are challenged to grow spiritually. That's a literal part of the story. And so they are challenged to make spiritual realizations that, just happen to come with amazing superpowers if you get it right. So the challengers are focused into different questions throughout the books. In one of the books, that for example, we're challenged to answer the question, what are the most important words a person can say? And the book has many answers, and it's part of the plot. And then eventually the answer for the main character is, I will do better. Those are the most important words that he thinks a person can say. Well, a later question that's posed is, what is the most important step a person can take? And various answers are posed, and at first, the answer appears to be the first step, right? That's a good step. We got to make it. But after a lot of trials and tribulations, and I mean, these are big, fat books. There's plenty of time for trials and tribulations. We realize that the most important step a person can take is not the first step, but the next step. And that brings me to the idea that as we're going forward, instead of having to, if you need a little shorthand, if we're trying to decide what am I doing here in this liminal space where I don't know what's happening in my future and I'm a little bit nervous about it all, and how do I make myself content in this strange space while I wait for the world to tell me what's happening, I think asking ourselves, what's the next right thing is the answer. What's the next right thing? And it can be on Sunday morning when we're done with this service, the next right thing, I certainly hope, will be having pie. And it can also be, as I am moving into a new state, and I don't have a job lined up, and I'm kind of hoping to do chaplaincy, but it's all very fuzzy right now. I'm thinking, well, what is my next right step? And I think that next right step for me is going to boil down to the concrete things of sending out applications, right? But it's such a small question. But if we apply it to ourselves, it can really cut right to the heart of things. It's been amazing to be here with you. You have taught me so much. You have helped me and supported me. In 2020, when I started, I was half-time, and I was also half-time at another church in Waco, and they had to let me go in COVID, and it was poor timing on their part. It didn't go great. They told me they were letting me go the same week that I'd put my mom into hospice, and as soon as you guys heard I wasn't going to be working there anymore, the first thing you said was, "Can you come work more for me?" You saved me. That was my saving, was to be able to continue to do this work. I love those people. I love you. But to be able to do my work, and not just mine, but yours, and to have you do it with me has been a gift, a great healing for me. And I want to say thank you to that. You have challenged me. I have learned many things about myself. I have learned that I am a good boss, but I'm not a good heavy. I have learned that I am probably a little bit too much of a pushover, but I've also learned that when it comes down to it, I will say what I need to say, and I will make myself clear, and people can take that or leave it, and I'm okay with that. And I appreciate you guys for challenging me and helping me learn that about myself. About ministry, you've taught me so much, not just all the technology stuff. I did not imagine myself learning to be a video editor. It was now on my resume. And yet, what I'm talking about is you have taught me that UU congregations are unique, that everyone is very different. And you've also taught me that there is a beautiful through line that runs through our faith of kindness and welcome, of deep thought and critique and intentionality. And I also want to just say to you, the first 2.5 years I was here, I was on my own spiritual journey, which you all got to hear about at the beginning of this year. And you have been the people who walked with me through that, through my own discovery that I do believe in a loving universe. I do believe that there is enough love in the world and in the cosmos, that what we feel when we look with love toward the stars is returned with great joy. That love is natural, that it is the nature of things. And I cannot thank you enough for being my guides and my inspirations and my companions on that journey. Thank you for sharing it. The last thing I want to leave you with is one more reading. And then I will leave you with a question, because I said questions are important. You know, what's the next right thing? Well, I'm going to leave you with a very different question, too. This is from Michael Schuler, and he writes it as a benediction, but I'm going to share it here with you as my benediction for this homily. We've reached the end of this time for the gathering of memory, and for letting the imagination play with future ideas. We've enjoyed magic moments together, and we've edified each other. Shall it be concluded? Or will this adventure, now commenced, continue? Will our separate paths go away and then perhaps converge and meet and merge? No matter whether they do or not, the joyous struggle for meaning, the unending quest for a love more perfect and more just, these will go on and make our lives more abundant, and we have learned it from one another. So is this ending to be an ending, or merely the prelude to a new and more glorious beginning? I pose the question. In your hearts lies the answer. And my final Zen koan for you is, how does a centaur put on blue jeans? Amen.